Everyone, and thank you so much for joining another NRS webinar. We're really excited to have you. We have some fun things on the topic today as you joined. So first of all, I am Joy Green. I am a program analyst with PARS. We are also joined by our ASL interpreter, that is Alyssa Enders. And then we will also have a presentation with Maggie Lawrence with the NIFA Office of Communications. If at any point during the conversation you cannot view the interpreter, please let us know via the chat so that we can correct that. Following the presentation, we will go over the upcoming deadlines for the year. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop those in the chat and they will be moderated and shared throughout the discussion. So Maggie, if you want to go ahead and take the wheel.
Sure thing, Joy. Well, as Joy said, I'm Maggie Lawrence. I'm with the Communications Department, and I want to talk a little bit with you today about how the importance of impacts and how we share them with the public. You know, impacts, why it matters. Many of us are taxpayer-funded institutions. It proves your value. It proves you're effective at what you do. Helps increase your visibility. And from NIFA's perspective, it helps create a database of your successes. Now, who really cares about impact? You know, we do know that the scientific community does, as well as NIFA staff and leadership, but perhaps the most critical people who care about the impacts of your work and your research are Congress, national, state, and local governments, and the American people and the general public. Now, how do you go about sharing your impact? Well, there are a lot of ways, and you can see them here on this slide. You know, articles, using your social media, news media. But two very important ones I really want to take a moment to talk about and focus on is, first off, the NIFA reporting system and the land grant impacts database. And those are important because that's how my colleagues in communications find your work and your impacts the quickest and easiest way. And that's how we amplify the good work you're doing, because we can find them either in the NIFA reporting system or in the land grant impacts database. Now, some of you, I don't know quite who our audience is. I know some of you are probably project leads. Some of you may be a communications people. How awards get announced from NIFA is that NIFA will first notify that project director that an award is being received. But NIFA will not release or announce those awards until all the money has been awarded, and also all our partners on Capitol Hill have been notified. Our stakeholder liaison will have notified all the congressional delegation. Once that's done, generally the announcement will actually, you'll get an email from me saying someone in your organization has received an award. It'll also be announced the same day in the NIFA update, which I hope all of y'all are subscribed to. And after you get word from either NIFA update or from me or one of my colleagues, then you can do your own announcement of the grant. And one of the things that we always ask is that you identify NIFA as the funding source. Back in the day, we had this much longer statement with lots of digits and numbers. Now something like this work is supported by the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture will work just fine in a news release. And it'll also need to be included in any supporting materials like pamphlets or publications that you would create in support of the grant. Now, what is impact? Really, the best thing I can describe it is that an impact is what makes a difference in real people's lives. It's also a summary that's written in terms your grandmother your neighbor next door can understand. And it is brief. It gives enough detail for your neighbor, your grandmother, your county commissioner, the governor, your congressman can understand. And the most important thing to know about an impact is that it shows change, whether that's a behavior change, a show of attitude change, an improvement in the situation. I came to NIFA from the Alabama Cooperative Extension System, and I always used to say that the Expanded Food Nutrition Education Program, FNEP, was fabulous about doing impacts because they do pre and post tests so they could show a behavior change or an attitude change. But those kind of things can also be done no matter the program or the project. It's just a matter of finding a way to document those changes, showing a return on investment. We won't beat a dead horse here, but an impact statement is not how many people who showed up at your program. It's not how many phone calls. All these things you see on this screen are outputs, and they do have value, but only as they help illustrate the impact you're trying to highlight. Impacts show key change, economic value or efficiency. For example, in an agriculture program, you could show that because of your extension program or the research done, that producers in your state now require fewer herbicide sprays on a crop. That would demonstrate economic value, but it can also demonstrate environmental quality. Of course, that same reducing herbicide sprays would show environmental quality. What the key thing about impact is they tell people, so what? This is why you should care. This is why the research, the extension programs, the educational efforts our organizations are doing is important to them, their communities, even their businesses. All right, let's talk a little bit about what should be in an impact story. I'm going to refer you to landgrantimpacts.org. That's an open database that anybody can check out. And that format works great for crafting a strong impact story. You get cues to write about relevance. What's the problem? Your organization's response, the results, the impact, what happened. Now, we're definitely going to focus on impact, not output. And also the public value statement. And often that's one or two sentences at the very end of an impact story that just sums up why the work you did is so good and so important. Critical things to remember: they're informative, they're concise, brief, and they're written in terms that non-scientists and non-extension professionals can understand. And you can find great examples at landgrantimpacts.org. One of the downfalls of that database is the funding source is an optional field. And that's unfortunate, because many times when my colleagues and I are looking for an impact story, we really want to know what that funding source is. We want to know if it's capacity funding. We want to know if it's Hatch or Evans Allen research funding, if it's a competitive grant like AFRI. So when you are working on those impacts, please be sure and include the funding source. Now, all of you may not be able to upload things to this database. That really depends on how your organization is set up. But someone in your leadership or your communications department should know who is uploading those stories for you guys. So it may be that you would write the impact story and forward it on to the communications professional. This is managed at Texas A&M University, and I neglected to put the contact person who manages the database. But Joy, I will get that information to you so you can share that. So in case people have trouble finding out, who for their organization is allowed to upload to this, to the landgrantimpacts.org, we can put them in touch with someone who can let them know who is. All right. I know this is small, but key things in this impact story, the things we talked about, a title, you see relevance, response, results, public value. These are all probably, the best ones are definitely under 500 words, and some of them may be actually under 350. And right up here in this corner, while this program from our good friends at the University of Florida at IFIX Extension is good, they didn't tell me how it was funded. My gut feeling, it would probably be capacity funding since it's an extension program, but it would mean I'd have to chase it down. So that's why identifying the funding source is so important. Now, how do we use impacts? Well, this quote from the secretary says it all. Secretary Vilsack tells his communications people, not just in the main USDA, but throughout all of USDA sub-agencies, give me the story. And we love to do that for him because stories engage people. We use them when we create talking points and speeches for not just the secretary, but the undersecretary, also for our director, Dr. Dion Toombs. We use them when agency officials and USDA officials are traveling. Press releases. We use them when we pitch directly to the media. We use them in newsletters. For example, NIFA's own external newsletter reaches 86,000 subscribers. So we use them a lot of different ways, but from your perspective, probably the most important ways that we use them is that we use them in talking points and speeches for agency officials and travel sheets. So when they come to your area or when they are talking to legislators from your state, they can speak knowledgeably about the good work you're doing. Some resources that you can use to get some ideas on how to improve your impact writing are both at landgrantimpacts.org and also the Multi-State Research Fund group. Now, all the impacts on the multi-state are written by one person, but there are resources that you can avail yourself on both those sites. How do you reach us with impacts? Tag us on social media. Currently, we use USDA's overarching Facebook page. There will be a NIFA specific page coming soon. You can tag us on Twitter, USDA_NIFA, or also hashtag NIFA Impacts. USDA's link or NIFA LinkedIn page. And be sure when the annual report is being completed to be submitted in that NIFA reporting system that you're including those impacts there. And Joy, I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now if I can remember how to do that. Oh, there it is. It's on the other monitor.
Before you stop, Maggie, we actually had someone that wanted you to go back and talk about what an impact is not, if you could do that.
I could absolutely do that. And I'm just going to go back to my screen and pop back to, see if I can pop back to that slide. Okay. An impact isn't how many people showed up. It's not how many publication printouts you handed out. It's not phone calls. It's not, your potential reach through social media. It's not how many newspapers or scholarly articles got published. Impact at its finest and at its most concise is how you changed something, how you changed your audience, if it's an extension program, how you changed your audience's understanding of nutrition and encourage them to add more fruits and vegetables. For research, it may be the fact that you have identified a gene that will combat citrus greening disease, help prevent citrus greening disease. And now you're working to develop rootstocks for citrus plants. It's about change. It's not necessarily about the work you do to make that change happen. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much.
What else can I answer?
So
we were going to look at that. We were going to look at the national reporting system. That's right, Joy.
Yes, we will. We do have a few questions, but I want to go ahead and pull up that report first so you can talk about that, the example from Arkansas. Just a second.
All right. Well, I expect all of you are familiar in some fashion that an annual report is required to be submitted to NIFA. And well, if it's an annual report, obviously it has to be done annually. And in one aspect of that report, you can highlight key programs. And we certainly encourage you to do that, because that's one spot where my colleagues and I, and also national program leaders, go and look for impact stories, because we recognize that things may not all hit that land grant impacts database org. So we use the annual reports a lot when we are looking for things to share, highlighting your good work. And what Joy has brought up, I think when she first showed it to me, I think the Arkansas annual report is almost a 40-page PDF. But here you see a program where it's designated Health and Wellness in Arkansas. And we know it aligns with one of NIFA's strategic goals because it's got a blue star by it. So we look for things that are aligning with our strategic goals, because NIFA's strategic goals mesh under USDA's overarching priorities. And as you see here, what they ask you to do is essentially an impact statement. Describe the issue. Describe what you did. Describe how your audience benefited. Simply that one, describe how your audience benefited. That's what was the impact of your work on your audience. So if you craft something like this for your state's annual report for them to submit to as part of their annual report in NRS, it's an impact statement. So these are incredibly important. And I will also encourage you to, whenever possible, link your projects to those NIFA priorities. When I see Diane just ask a question, it popped up. It will ask you, it will show you when it's being uploaded into the system. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joy, as it's being uploaded, you would identify it as supporting one of those priorities. So I believe, it's my understanding that that would be as the report is being uploaded into NRS. But I'm not an NRS expert. I'm a communications person. So we'll let the PARS staff provide guidance on that.
I have not seen anything to the contrary, but I will if additional guidance comes through. Thanks.
And the star may be not necessarily that it links to a priority, but that it is something you want to highlight. And I may have it confused. And if I do, my apologies. Thank you. I see Craig has gotten us squared away. The star is a project you want to highlight. So there we go.
Okay.
And I can tell y'all, and Joy, we don't have to keep up with that. We can go back to just a regular viewpoint. We can lose that, your screen share. I will tell you that currently the NIFA communications staff is working with national program leaders because every annual report has been reviewed by one of the NPLs. And we are asking them to share with us impacts that they have identified and that they think are important that we find ways to amplify. We're also ourselves going behind, we've divvied up the states among ourselves in communications, and we're following behind the NPLs and looking for things. Sometimes those impact statements might be a single program. For example, this week, maybe next week, you will see something that I wrote about a coordinated agriculture project on tribal lands called Native Waters. It features one program. But a couple of weeks ago, I did a piece that looked at the impacts of research and extension programs related to potatoes in terms of potato production and things like that. So sometimes it's a single organization, a single land grant. Sometimes it's multiple agencies. So it just kind of depends.
Okay, let's see if we have any questions in here for you. Thank you so much, Maggie, for this valuable information as the reports continue to be uploaded into NRS, and we see multiple ways that that information is used by NIFA and that can be also used by the LGUs. So we have a question. Can you provide us with good examples of research impacts as well? Research impacts are trickier to write than extension impacts, especially now that faculty are supposed to be writing these themselves for their research projects.
I think impact statements for research, maybe you'll actually kind of think a bit like of them like an abstract in terms of that kind of length, that brevity, but craft them as if you were telling your 7th grade child. Write them as if you were not talking to your colleagues, plant pathologists and entomologists. Write them as if you were talking to someone who does not understand your vocabulary. And it's all right to say, and we understand that many of our grants support multi-year efforts. A program can still have impact even if you haven't gotten to the end of your granting year and finished your overarching research. Identifying new avenues or that you've had success with some of your objectives, that's an impact as well because it's validated your work and is giving you direction to move forward. Also know for some of the biggest items, like the piece I was talking about, the coordinated ag project, native waters on native lands. The NPL first suggested that project to me, and he gave me the background. And then I went and read the project summary available in CRIS, our research database. But then I interviewed the project director. So a lot of times, if it's not as clear as we might want for something that we would be amplifying by NIFA, a communications staffer is probably going to reach out to the project director and go, hey, you know me, I'm just a communications person. I got a bachelor's degree in journalism. Can you explain it so I understand? And also know if it's something that's going to be released through NIFA for our blogs as an impact story or anything like that, it will come back to the project director if we've interviewed them for them to review and edit to make sure we have the science correct. Now, if it's just one where we've, like I did with the potato story, compiled some short facts, that's not going to go to every research director. But all of my communication colleagues, we never want to get the science wrong. And we want our work to appropriately reflect your work and amplify your good.
Thank you. Another question we have is, should we be selective in blue starring our projects? I can see the institutions highlighting them all.
I would say that I appreciate selectivity, but that may come down to your administration of what they want to do. But for me, the selectivity, and I think for my colleagues, is that this says, these 5, these 10, these are our very best. So we can go, yeah, these are the ones we need to put in the travel sheet for the secretary or for Dr. Toombs. So I understand why administration might want to highlight everything, star everything. I appreciate selectivity.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Maggie. If there are no further questions for her, we will go right along and discussing the reporting deadlines. We really appreciate you taking the time to explain all that wonderful information, and we will provide Maggie's presentation to you all along with the recording following the meeting. If you have any questions for her, even during the discussion of the reporting deadlines, still feel free to continue to use the chat or the Q&A feature, and we'll get to that at that time.
Thanks for having me, Joy. And I'm going to hang out here and watch the chat while you talk about other things.
Oh, I greatly appreciate that. So next up, we're going to talk about and just share these reporting deadlines. Now, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. For those of you who are visiting the launch page, the page that you are directed to access NRS, you probably have seen a sneak peek of this. So these are the 2022 reporting deadlines. No new reports, nothing fancy, but we just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the upcoming deadlines. So the financial reports will be tentatively due February 1st. That's what we're aiming for. Additional information regarding how that will be submitted should be coming out this winter. And we are diligently working on that with all of the transitions. So that is the goal for that deadline. The results and final reports, that will be March 1st. And that is for all of the annual report of accomplishments and the final reports for programs that are ending on or before September 30th, 2022. So that is your FY 2022 information. Then you have the annual report of accomplishments. That will be May 1st, May 1st, 2023. And then, of course, plan of work. I know we just submitted that. It will be due again September 1st next year. And while I'm talking about plan of work, just wanted to remind you, if you are in the process of receiving feedback from either PARS or an NPL about your submission, please, please, please respond to that as soon as possible, make those corrections, modify that template so we can continue with that process. We have received quite a bit of the information that we needed, so continue to turn that in so we can work towards that quarter funding with the awards management division with NIFA. And so finally, the OGFM supplemental form for FY 2022. That is to be determined. We have to contact them and work through that process. If there is PARS involvement with that, we will let you know. But we are working to get that deadline for you guys as soon as possible. Updates to this information is made regularly, and it is posted again on our website, that launch page, as we call it, where you go and you access the system. So you'll always be able to see any changes to the deadlines. And if we do change anything, we'll be sure to bring it to this space as well. So I'll see might be some questions popping up. Let me address those. How are you expecting the OGFM supplemental to be submitted? We're not sure at this time. We're working on that. So we're working with the department to determine that. And when we do, we will immediately share that information to you guys. So we're still working on it. Thank you, Terry. Let me go. There are a couple of more questions. Also, will the financial report formally and report be moved to NRS? I believe that is the discussion that is on the table. I don't want to speak prematurely. You guys know I'm still new. I've been here about 2 months, but I know they are working on financial components in other spaces. So I will verify that information and get back to you because I just don't want to say the wrong thing. And if somebody on the team, one of the panelists, if you want to feel free and jump in and answer that question, I'll be more than happy to talk about it, or you can come off mute and talk about it. What is the deadline for the RFA request? I do not know that one either, but I will find out. So any deadlines, including these and the ones that you're submitting in the chat, and in the Q&A, I will be sure to, when I send out the recap, to answer your questions because I don't want them to go unanswered, but I don't want to make any guesses or assumptions. Okay. Will NRS send reminders about the results and final reports requirements to the individual project directors? I believe we could. I'm not quite sure who we already target. If someone from my team wants to lovely help me out, that'd be great, Craig or anyone. But I can look to that too.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Joy? I didn't catch the question. The question
was, will NRS send reminders about the results and final reports requirement to individual project directors?
I would need to see the exact scenario potentially. I don't want to say yes or no between now and then either. We're working on notifications and getting those integrated into the system. And I need to see what type of, we have some email notifications now. I don't know every scenario for those email notifications, but we're trying to build those into the system here shortly.
Okay, thank you. So now everybody has lots of questions, so don't you go anywhere. Is there a way to see a closed project in NRS? Anybody from Booz want to take that?
Hi, Joy, this is Aaron.
Hi, Aaron.
Yes, currently all projects are visible in NRS. As we move to a posture where we can support an actual closed out project, we may handle the way you consume that, but for now, they're all available.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. Checking to see, I believe we have covered the questions, but if I've missed any, please someone let me know. I see people typing away. So we appreciate you guys. If there are no further questions, I'm gonna make sure. I don't believe I see any new questions. So we will be sure to get the presentation out to you guys. Any additional questions that I wasn't able to answer today or I need further clarification, I will make sure that I send that in a recap along with the recording for the webinar and any other materials shared. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I will allow you guys to go ahead and enjoy your days, and we appreciate you joining us today for this webinar. We look forward to seeing you in October. Thank you.